Morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in your day. Thank you so much for making chemistry part of your day. Just want to give a very quick tutorial on how to make a graph in Excel. Everybody should be able to do this, and I'll give a few pointers as I go through. So first thing you want to do is put in your data. You should always put labels so you know what you're graphing or what your data is when you come back and look at this file a week later and you have no idea what you typed in. And we typically will put the units after the header in parentheses. And milliliters is little m, capital L. I know that looks funny, but that's the way it is. And then if you want to resize the column, see how when between A and B, there's a line, and see how I go from kind of a white plus sign to a double arrowed line? If you just double click there, it'll automatically resize the column for you. A little bit of a trick. Do the same thing here, and then same thing here. And I am a terrible speller. It's awesome, be centimeters. And then you can actually do more than one at a time if you want to highlight and double click. That'll do that as well. Just wanted to show you a few tricks of the trade. I'm just going to type in the numbers exactly like you all have in your lab manuals. And we have our data inputted. Now let's say you wanted different numbers of sig figs, or you wanted to show that those zeros are significant. See these little, you can move them out here or move them in. You can change the decimal point there. So that's something that might come up as well. Okay. And if you ever want Excel to do math, so let's say you wanted to multiply these numbers, or I wanted to change it from milliliters to liters. So let's just show a quick calculation. The way to tell Excel you're doing math is the equal sign, and then you can just do your unit conversion. There is 1 liter and 1,000 milliliters. You just divide. And then as far as copying down, you can do Control C and Control V, or you can do, which I prefer, is just to grab the bottom corner, and if you trace it down, it'll show the number. And if you wanted to lock in, like say, 1,000 to 1 ratio, you could do it this way as well. But you'd want that to always be whatever value is in place there. So $signs is what freezes that in. So when you copy now, you can see we'll freeze in that 1,000. So just want to show you a couple quick tricks in case you haven't used Excel much. This is obviously a pretty short graph that we're going to try to make. So what we've been asked to graph is the diameter versus the circumference. So you can highlight this, but I usually just go from scratch anyway. So I want to graph, insert. We're scientists. We want to see the actual data. If we put a line through it, we want it to mean something. So we're just going to see, this is our standard graph, XY scatter. And a lot of times what will come up is a bunch of junk. So you can either right click and select data, or you can go through the menu here on the side. I'm going to right click and then pick select data. And I'm just going to get rid of all the stuff that's in there right now. So let's just start fresh. Remove it all. And you're, again, depending on what you would highlight in the screen, how you typed it in, you're going to get different stuff there anyway. So just cut it all out, start fresh. Now we want to add on our graph. If you want to put a series name on there, that's fine. But in this case, we're just doing a single graph, so there's no legend. We don't have multiple points. There's no reason to preload that in. It'll only show up in the legend. For the X values, click in the box, and then choose our X values. And then for Y, you can do the same thing. Usually get rid of that little bit of code, otherwise you'll get an error message, and highlight that as well. The other thing you can do is if you have a huge data set and you can't see it, you can minimize here and do the selection the same way, and then pop it back out. Hit OK, and we have our points on our graph here. And at this point, that's all we need. If you were to make a second graph or you wanted to show a second data set, either something other than beakers that we measured, or something where the trend changed and you had a part where it went up and a part where it's flat, you could add in a second graph here the same way. So let's just hit OK. And let's do a couple things. This legend is not doing anything for us. Get rid of it. You know, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier for you all to see. You will never find a scientific publication with grid lines, so get rid of those as well. You can just click on them and hit delete, or you can choose to get rid of the grid lines here as well. You can just click. We do want to have axis titles. We always want to have that, so put that in. And you can just type right over that. and this will be diameter. And again, those units really matter, so put that in. And then over here, we do the same thing. Circumference in centimeters. And that's all set. And that's a little, I don't know about you, but I find that a little bit small. So you can just come here and you can make the font size a little bit larger so you can actually read it. You can do the same thing with your axis labels. If you find those hard to read, make those a little bit bigger. Just choose whatever font size you want. You can click through. This title is not doing anything. Most of the time your graph's not going to have a title. Again, in a scientific journal or publication, I mean, it'll have a title in the notes, you know, like figure 1, circumference versus diameter. But typically you wouldn't have it actually on the graph itself. So I'm going to take that out as well. Now the last thing we want to do is, you might notice there's a straight line here. And of course in your lab you're asked to add a straight line. So right click on a data point, add trend line, and we get this graph over here. Let me move my face out of the way. A couple things we want to do. We want to be linear, so make sure that's there. We want to display the equation. So we have our value. Oops. Let me get back in that. Trend line options. All right, let me back out of that. I don't know, I lost my menu. And bring that back up. Okay, so the format trend line. So the other thing we want to do is you never want the line to end right at your point. So you always want to forecast and backcast. Now this can be a little bit tricky depending on what the units are on your x-axis. So if you are going from 0.001, 0.002 on your tick marks, and you put 1 in here, it's going to make your graph explode so it's like 100 meters long. You don't want that. So just take whatever a tick mark increment is, and that's a good starting point. And it'll update right away, and you can just decide if you like the look of that. Now, the other thing I don't particularly like here is it's a dotted line. So if we go over to this bucket here, and we change it from a dash to a solid line, you can see we have that line. So that looks pretty good. The only thing is there's a lot of dead space on the graph. If you want to hide bad data, best thing you can do is zoom out. So we want to change our axis label. So click on your axis, and it'll bring up this menu. And then we want the, hold on, let me find the right menu. My axis options. And we want the minimum then to be about 4. Let's see how that looks. And we're going to do the same thing on this axis. And we want the minimum to be, let's say, 10. And now we can see our data a lot better. Let's make this so the font size is not itty bitty. Nice graph. And we've created a good looking professional graph. Now the last thing I like to do is we didn't graph y and x, right? And this is always easy to see. What do we graph? We graph the circumference. I'll just use C here. And we graph the diameter here. So now if you're trying to solve for circumference or diameter of something out of your relationship, it's very obvious what goes where and what you solve for. And that's it for making a graph. Thank you so much for your time. Have a fantabulous day.